G'day, welcome to another massive edition of VFL 23. We are in week 6. My name's Yeend and I'm joined by the voice of VFL football, Brendan Jonty Rhodes. Rhodesy, what a pre-season we've just about concluded, mate.
Yeah, pre-season's gone, the countdown is there. I'm in the dark. That's what's come behind us, that's what's coming in front. We're just about ready to go. And yeah, it all kicks off on Friday night, just down the road from me here at Icon Park, and we certainly can't wait for it.
Absolutely, but it's been a wonderful pre-season, and we've appreciated the support from everyone over the last 5 weeks, heading into week 6, as we've given you the commentator's view and understanding of the in-depth analysis of the VFLW and the VFL competition. Rosie, you've been the man in the hot seat and you've been all across it. Talk us through some of the results that happened on the weekend.
Yeah, well, the biggest one that happened over the weekend was North Melbourne. Once again, they completed an undefeated pre-season as a team that finished in the bottom 4 last year. They had 2 impressive wins over Footscray, and they played another team who was undefeated in the pre-season on Saturday in Williamstown, who we were talking up last week, and we've been talking up throughout the pre-season. And admittedly, they did have one of the best ruckmen of the modern era playing for them, the Kangaroos, in Todd Goldstein. But he absolutely put on a show, did Big Goldie, got best on ground by a country mile, and the Kangaroos won by 68 points, would you believe, over the Seagulls on Saturday. And they certainly will go into the round 1 with a full head of steam. They kicked the first 7 goals of the second quarter to turn a 5-point lead into a 43-point advantage at half-time. And then Williamstown won the third quarter just to give themselves a little bit of hope. And they kicked another 7 goals in the last quarter, North Melbourne. So a big win for the Kangaroos there. They got up 19-14, 128, I think it was. Yeah, to Williamstown 9-6-60, 13 goal scorers. So that is just a massive confidence boost for North Melbourne ahead of their game against Port on Saturday afternoon. Sammy Lowson, the recruit from Coburg, booted 3 goals. Hamish Free, who is their newly drafted ruck prospect, he kicked 3 goals as well. And the AFL guys who didn't get a game against West Coast on the weekend, they starred alongside Goldstein with Dan Howe, Taron Thomas, Aaron Hall, and Blake Drury being their best players at the top of the list. And Callan Dawson, the mid-season pick from Williamstown last year, Aidan Court, also appearing in the best players for North Melbourne. So a great result for them, a 68-point win over Williamstown.
They might have trouble getting a game this week in the AFL, considering how the boys performed on the weekend.
Yeah, impressive victory, wasn't it, for North Melbourne, building up a big lead and then hanging on as West Coast came back at the end. I'm pretty happy with that. I did tip that one, although I was probably not in the minority with the Kangaroos. Good on them.
Now, one of the results I caught from last weekend was the warm-up game to the season opener over at the G. But Richmond and Carlton over at Punt Road, and that was an extraordinary result considering the Tigers were up by plenty at half-time and they got rolled in the second half.
I actually got along to watch this one, Yeendy. I haven't had many chances to get along to a pre-season game due to other commitments in the summer, but I got there on Thursday and, well, at half-time, it just looked like how far Richmond. They looked really good. Carlton looked completely out of sorts. It was 47-12 was the score at the main break. The Blues had only kicked 1 goal through Paddy Dow at the 10-minute mark of the second quarter. But they just came out after the break and it seemed like they'd swapped Guernseys. And Carlton was absolutely dominant. They kicked 7 goals, 5 in the third quarter, the Blues, to Richmond's 2-3, and got themselves back within a kick at the last change. And don't tell anyone in the 46 players that played in that game that a practice match means nothing, because in the last quarter, both teams were absolutely desperate to win that game. We know Carlton and Richmond don't really like each other too much, but they're going for they're going for bragging rights heading into the season, and the lead changed 4 times in the last quarter in a terrific game of football. Blues ending up winning 12-14, 86 to 12-9, 81. A remarkable finish. Carlton kicked a behind from Alex Murkov from the boundary, which left Richmond with 30 seconds to try and go coast to coast to get a goal to win the game. As you do, straight up the middle. And there was the tower right there in the centre circle. Mark Pitnet took a huge contested mark in the centre circle with about 15 seconds to go to save the day. So maybe given what we saw a couple of hours later, the Blues AFL team can learn a little bit on how to seal out a game right at the end, because we saw Richmond do exactly the same thing and get away with the goal in the AFL game to draw it, didn't we?
Absolutely, yeah. That was a phenomenal finish, and from what we've seen too, particularly over the pre-season, we do see that VFL AFL connection strongly there between all clubs, and when you've got the AFL and the VFL alignment there, it certainly makes a big difference when you've got the in this case here, you've got the 2 Carlton lists together, the 2 Richmond lists together. No doubt that both teams will be hitting the drawing board for this weekend and looking at how they can better perform in those situations too.
Yeah, for sure. Very impressive, Paddy Dow, as I mentioned. Kicked the only goal in the first half. Did okay to keep his team into it, but in the second half, he was the one that really just went out and won the game. He ended up with 4 goals for the game. I would be surprised if he had anywhere under 35 disposals as well. Just a remarkable game to lift his team over the line. Jack Carroll was huge in the first half in particular and very good in the second, so his hands up for an AFL opportunity. The 2 key defenders in Lockie Plowman and Sam Durden, surprised that they weren't actually in the seniors, but they were terrific, especially in the first half when Richmond was bombarding them, as was Brodie Kemp down back. Harry Lemmy, the new ruck draftee for them, he bobbed up with 3 goals in the second half too. So promising signs there for the Blues. For Richmond, Judson Clark was their best player, I thought. Had a terrific game across halfback through the middle, used the ball well. Garrett McDonough returning from Essendon, very good. And Sam Banks, I thought, was very impressive as well for the Tigers. Samson Ryan, who almost got a senior game and almost got an AFL game, he didn't get a lot of the ball, but he looked dangerous whenever it went near him, and he ended up with a couple of goals from opportunistic snaps, which you don't see very often from a 200-centimetre big man. But yeah, terrific game of football and plenty to look forward to for both those teams this season.
Absolutely, a perfect sign of things to come. I think it really set up the big stage for the AFL season opener with an absolute cliffhanger over at Punt Road. Mate, just quickly go through some of the other VFL practice matches we had over the weekend across the Saturday and Sunday fixtures.
Yeah, I'll run through them in chronological order for you just to get them through. Brisbane Lions are really looking like one of the teams to beat this year. They carved up Southport for the second time in 3 weeks, 13-7-85 to 6-12-48. The Sharks only able to kick 2 goals to 3-quarter time in trailing that game by 44 points before winning the last quarter. Shadow Brain, 3 goals for the Lions. Jared Lyons, once again their best player, along with Noah Answorth and Wiley Buzzer. Max Pescud kicked 3 goals in the last quarter for Southport after the game was done, but showing that he's always going to be dangerous. Don't worry too much about Southport. They'll be still around the mark. Another big comeback from over at Moorabbin at RSCA Park, Werribee and Sandringham. Sandringham in complete control at half-time. They led by 22 points at the main break, but Werribee kicked 5-6 to no score in the third quarter and then held off a late charge to win by 4 points, 10-13-73 to the Zebras, 10-9-69. Jesse Clark, Sam Pierre and Emmanuel Ajang were best for Werribee. Sandringham, though, promising performance given how many players are injured on the St Kilda list, 14. The Saints winning in the AFL and very nearly winning in the VFL shows that they might have a little bit more depth than we potentially predicted. So keep an eye out for them. Collingwood and Geelong, a tight game at the AIA Centre on Saturday, went the way of the Magpies in a close finish. Geelong came back from 17 points down at three-quarter time. Collingwood winning by 6, 10-5-65 to 8-11-59. Ash Johnson, the star out of that game for the Magpies, kicking 4 of his team's 10 goals. And Ollie Dempsey, who I think might have got an AFL debut last year for Geelong, and their new academy local boy, Ted Clowassy, Category B rookie, were their best players. Very impressive win for the Northern Bull Ants, getting themselves over the line by 30 points against Frankston. We don't have a hell of a lot of details from that one, unfortunately, but the Bull Ants led all day, 11-15-81 to Frankston, 7-9-51. So once again, it's been a solid pre-season from the Bull Ants. They finally got their win, and some confidence for them to take into the season against Richmond on Sunday in the TV game.
Absolutely. Well, they're certainly going to be one of the big movers here in this competition after a frustrating season last year. And but you look at that fixture too, Frankston and Northern Bull Ants. You do want to see both teams really step up and improve over the course of season 2023. So the form that both teams have shown in the off season, it's looking very promising.
Yeah, unfortunately, no scores from the Frankston Academy game against Beau Morris, which was the second game played on that day out at the Linen House. Footscray, look out for Footscray. Lost twice to North Melbourne in the pre-season, but they took on a reasonably strengthened Casey Demons. The Demons missing some of their VFL-listed players, but plenty of AFL players running around. And Footscray won by 71 points against the reigning premiers, would you believe?
Wow.
They led by 1 point at quarter time. They extended that to 23 at halftime, but 6 goals, 1 to 3 points in the third quarter, and then another 5 goals to 3 in the last, blew it wide open. 18-11-119 to Casey Demons, 7-6-48. Robbie McComb with 3 goals for Footscray, and Josh Shackey with 3 goals for Casey in his first game there. But the Dogs with, I think it was 3, 6, 9, 12, they had 13 goal scorers as well in their game, Footscray. So very, very good result for them. And given that the two teams play again this Saturday afternoon out at Casey Fields with the Demons unfurling the premiership flag, it certainly puts a really good spin on that one. And it's one I can't wait to. It's my game for broadcast this weekend on Clutch TV and afl.com.au. From 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon with the great Darren Parkin as well. So we're looking forward to that. And there's really something to look forward to now after that result.
Absolutely. And the other game on the Saturday too, mate, Gold Coast did it pretty easy against Sydney University. Alex Sexton on fire with 6 goals, and Ned Moyle, probably a bit of an underrated ruckman in the Suns lineup, but he had an outstanding day.
Yeah, more information from you than I've got there. Unfortunately, the Suns could only give me a final score, and reckon they didn't record any other details. But that final score, 21-24, 150 for the Suns over Sydney University, 3-7-25. So a 125-point win there for the Suns. And even though Sydney Uni are not the team they were when they were in the NEFL, that's a good confidence booster for the Suns heading in. GWS, a big win over Sydney on Sunday morning in their last practice match, 13-9-87 to the Swans, 6-8-44. Again, minimal details out of that game, but I can tell excited Giants fans that Aaron Cadman, the number 1 draft pick, booted 6 goals in the game, which gives him 10 in 2 weeks. So his hand is well and truly up for an AFL debut. Whether it's as soon as this weekend's trip to West Coast, I don't know, but he's certainly not going to be far away if he keeps putting up numbers like that in the VFL. And Box Hill Hawks, who, of course, were well beaten by Williamstown last week, they bounced back. They came from behind at three-quarter time with 6 goals to 2 in the last quarter to beat Essendon at the NEC Hangar. Box Hill 14-8-92 over the Bombers, 11-11-77. Max Ramsden, the mid-season draft selection from last year, kicked 3 goals for the Hawks. a good result for them heading into round one as well.
Simply exciting and a great finale, a big 4 weeks of VFL practice matches. And we also had some matches in the VFLW, mate, as the season hots up for this weekend's season opener. Tell us a little bit about what happened over the weekend.
Yeah, just the one match, in fact, in the last weekend before the season starts. And it was Williamstown who completed an undefeated pre-season, 3 from 3, which they would be absolutely delighted about, considering they've only won 2.5 games in each of the past 2 seasons. They were scoreless, actually, in the first quarter against the Bulldogs, who didn't win a game last year, remember. Mm-hmm. The Dogs led 1-2-8 to no score at quarter time. But Williamstown stepped it up and, in fact, did not allow Western Bulldogs to score themselves for the next 2 terms of the game. They kicked 3 goals, 8 themselves in a low-scoring game, 1-1 each in the last quarter. Williamstown 4-9-33, beating the Western Bulldogs 2-3-15 at the Skinner Reserve in Braybrook. Tegan Brett was best on ground for the Seagulls with 2 goals. Talia Wright, Danica DeSanto, and their key players, they're the real stars of the Williamstown team, Ruby Tripodi, Shani Whiting, and the captain, Erin Mead. They all stood up and got themselves named in the best. So Williamstown undefeated in the pre-season, plenty to look forward to, but the Bulldogs are showing some signs in the 3 games that they had that they might not be quite as easy to push aside as they did last year.
Spot on there, mate. And just in general discussion, mate, I know that the landscape of the VFLW is actually changing for the better. Looking at the Box Hill Hawks, they've just some of their recruits coming across. And I want to pump up the tyres of one of the girls they've recruited from Bond University, Annie Muir. We see that she's going to add a lot of pace to this Hawks lineup. I think we're really starting to see, we've spoken about it in the earlier editions, about players migrating from the north coming into the competition. We're going to see a lot more depth added here, and I think we're going to see a lot more potential for players getting drafted from this VFLW competition, from players coming from all around the country to be a part of this. You mentioned already last year with what we saw with Sydney sending some of their players down to be part of this competition. As we embark on the season opener, over this pre-season, do you feel like we're actually going to see some really good, strong acquisitions and sort of super talent to make this competition bigger and better than what it ever has been before?
I think it is. It is. You're exactly right there. Obviously, there's 2 other strong state league competitions, the same as in the men in the Sample W and the Waffle W. Both of those competitions are, I think, about 4 or 5 weeks in now. Yeah. It might be round 4 for the Waffle W this week and round 4 or 5 for the Sample W. So they play earlier. Mm-hmm. You might end up seeing a couple of ladies come across from those comps when they are completed earlier on in the year. But I would still be an advocate for them to extend the season back out to its full length. Yep. Giving them more games to promote themselves and push themselves forward for the drafts and that sort of thing. And we saw the trade period finish on Monday, in fact, yep. With some big results and 4 top 10 draft picks actually changing hands in that trade period, which you just would not see in the AFL. But yet, VFLW form gets you opportunities like that, and Laura Gardner is the perfect example. Mm-hmm. Didn't get a lot of opportunity in the midfield at Geelong in the AFLW, given they had 2 All-Australians in there in Georgie Prespakis and Amy McDonald, plus a number 1 draft pick in Nina Morrison. But Laura Gardner, who averaged 35 possessions a game in the VFLW for the Cats last year, and had 49 in 1 game, would you believe?
Wow.
The Sydney Swans parted with pick number 1 at lunchtime on Monday to get her up to the club. So that tells you, like, there's no way that happens if she hasn't done what she did in the 7 VFLW games that she played that earned her a chance to play just about every game in the last AFLW season for Geelong. And now becomes one of the marquee recruits for a new team in the Sydney Swans, who are looking for their first win in season 8.
I wonder if what might happen here with the evolution of the VFLW program, whether we've spoken about potential teams from other states coming in and being part of the weekly fixtures, even from a practice match point of view. But I just wonder whether it might put a little bit more added pressure on some of the state league women's programs to up the ante and try and draw more recruiters to some of their games, to encourage AFL clubs to draft from them over the course of the year.
I think as the AFLW competition develops, that will change. Yep. In the past, the drafts have been state-based at AFLW level, meaning a player from Western Australia could nominate Western Australia, and Freo and West Coast would be the only clubs that were allowed to draft her. Same in South Australia with the Crows and now the Power coming into the competition. And Victoria had 2 zones. You could nominate country Victoria, which would only allow Geelong to pick you up, or you could name all of or Metro Victoria, which meant the Cats couldn't get you, or all of Victoria, which means you could go anywhere there, of course. There is now one more category, which is the development towards a fully uncompromised draft, and that is that players can now nominate to go anywhere in Australia. So they can be drafted from Brisbane to Melbourne, or to Perth, or to wherever they want, or whichever club wants them, because they say, yep, I am willing to move anywhere in Australia to play AFLW football. That's the next step on from that is obviously the open draft, where there's no local nominations. That's probably still a couple of years away, given that the season only runs for 10 weeks plus finals, and I suppose the earning capacity to get players to move for 14 weeks plus a pre-season, say for 6 months, is not quite really there. They would need to have a job and that sort of thing throughout the year, and especially for the 6 months that they're not playing football. But it's on the way. It's on the way. It's happening quickly. And once we do get that open draft, then yes, obviously the Victorian clubs in particular and the other state clubs will start looking more into state to get their players.
I think the ideal layout over the next few years, with the growth and development of the with the VFL competition, where we've got teams from all up the eastern seaboard, that we would see the VFLW follow the same basis, and essentially you can have the VFLW and the AFLW seasons run concurrently, and you can have the VFLW as your curtain raiser to your AFLW games, much as like what we're seeing with the VFL and the AFL program.
Yeah, we'd love to see that, and to make that happen too, the AFLW needs to eventually move into the football season bracket, the March to September football season bracket, which it will eventually, I think. Once it's fully established as its own product. I certainly hope it does, because it deserves to be in footy season. That's the way I see it. I understand the argument for wanting to give it clear air away from the AFL competition, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really have clear air because the other sports come in. It's in the first part of the year, and even in the last part of the year, you're competing against cricket, tennis when it was in January. And all that, and the spring racing carnival now, the AFL finals into the spring racing carnival. So that does take eyeballs away from the AFLW competition. So yeah, that's what I'd say if they ask me, which they never will, of course. Play it from March to September. How good would it be to go to the AFL Grand Final? Bugger this pre-match entertainment off. We don't need it. We want another football game. We want at least one more football game, and that is the AFLW Grand Final. Bring it on.
I think so too. I'm with you. You're listening to and watching a VFL 23. You've got Rhodes, you've got Yeendy, you've got the voices of the people that know the game, that analyse the game, that call the game here, and you can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, Amazon Radio, all the other platforms. You can catch us right around there. Stick around, because after this we are going to dissect and give our tips for round 1 of the VFLW season openers before we look at the VFL openers. Stick around after the break. Welcome back to VFL 23. You've got Rhodesy, the voice of VFL and VFLW footy. And you've got Yeendy here, and we're looking at round 1. Saturday, March 25, VFLW action. Rhodes, it's been a long pre-season, and we've picked the teeth out of it. We've looked at the teams in depth like nothing else before. Mate, we kick off with Carlton and Port Melbourne over at Icon Park. How does this one going to go down, mate?
Interesting game, isn't it? Carlton's had a good pre-season. Bad way to start, really. Carlton's had a good pre-season, got a couple of nice wins. You don't really know how they're going to go until they get into it. Port Melbourne finished down the ladder last year, as the Blues did. This is, I believe, it's a bottom four contest from last year. But both teams are expected to improve. They'd be happy enough with the fixture. Port made the finals, of course, in 2021 before dropping away last year. I think they actually had a game against each other during the pre-season. I'll just have a look, a quick look back there. They did, and it was a big win for the Blues on that day back in week 1. Carlton 9-7-61, Port Melbourne 3-1-19. That's a long time ago now, so I don't know how much you read into that. At home, at the same ground, you would expect Carlton to start favourites and get the job done. But Port will certainly have taken some lessons from that, and you'd expect them to be a lot harder to put away.
Absolutely. We'll go through Darebin and Southern Saints. Darebin have been one of the powerhouses of the competition for so long. They take on the Southern Saints, who are the reigning grand finalists.
Yeah, the first two premierships in the VFLW competition in 16 and 17 were won by the Falcons. They won, I think, 10 in 11 years or 10 in 12 years or something like that, if you count the old VWFL beforehand. It's been a little bit tougher for them in the last 2 or 3 years since the AFLW really got established. They lost a lot of their superstars to AFLW clubs. So they've gone down the development pathway. They had at least one good win, I think, in the pre-season. They'll give themselves a chance against the Southern Saints, who made the grand final last year, but haven't had a very good pre-season, losing to both the. I think they've lost to the top three teams from last year in the pre-season. It's a good challenge for them, given that they're the teams that they're going to be playing twice during the year. You would expect the Saints to win at La Trobe University up in Bundoora, but certainly Darebin at home will be thinking they could be right for the picking of Saints given the pre-season that they've had.
Geelong and North Melbourne over at Deakin University from 2 p.m. This is going to be one mighty contest.
Yeah, an absolute ripper again. Both teams finished in the middle bracket last year. Geelong was fourth. I think North Melbourne finished seventh. Both teams, as we mentioned last week, have got pretty healthy draws, pretty healthy fixtures in the first half of the season. So the momentum that can be gained from winning round one would be absolutely massive to potentially go on and be 4-5-6, maybe even 7-0. And if you do that, you're playing finals. It's as simple as that. So that's how important this contest is for both these teams. Pretty hard to tip against Geelong down there. Although their record, the VFLW record, is not quite as healthy at Deakin Uni as it is for maybe the teams that play at Kardinia Park. But yeah, I'm going for the Cats. There's not going to be much in it.
Collingwood and Williamstown at 2 p.m. at Victoria Park. This will be the game that is the main event of Saturday afternoon football over Victoria Park, with the VFL being played beforehand. Your quick tip on this one, mate?
Yeah, no question about that one. A really huge game this. Williamstown, as we said, an undefeated pre-season. Collingwood's been a powerhouse for the last couple of years. Haven't been that good in the pre-season comp. So if Williamstown can go out there and get points against the Magpies, that would be a massive boost and would really frank what they've done, what Liam Kavanagh's done during the off-season. It's pretty hard. I still am going to Collingwood. Go with established season form over the last couple of years. But it certainly wouldn't surprise me to see Williamstown make a statement and say we're not going to be a bottom four this team this year. We're going to be one to watch.
Sunday morning football over at the Hangar. It's the Bombers and the Hawks, and that is the precursor to the VFL game. The Bombers, well, if they're the reigning premiers, they'll get a chance to unfurl their flag and fittingly against the Hawks. And being a Bombers man, I would like to see them beat the Hawks in back-to-back games after what happened in the AFL last weekend. But Box Hill Hawks, I'm getting behind my girl Annie Muir from Bond University up here on the Gold Coast. She's going to have an absolute blinder and she's going to settle in. But the Bombers are going to be a tad too strong.
Yeah, agree. VFLW match of the round. This one is the all games are being live streamed this year on the AFL.com.au. This is the feature game of the weekend between the reigning premiers and the team that finished second after the home and away season. Of course, they were called Hawthorn last year. They're now called Box Hill, as we know. Hawthorn had a good win over Essendon. Box Hill had a good win over Essendon in the pre-season. On the ground 2 weeks ago. So they're certainly going to be confident. They've got nothing to lose. 4 goals to Matty Boyd on that day, the recruit from Geelong. Yeah, Essendon haven't been travelling that great. They got over the line in a couple of close ones. A new sort of team. I'm really wanting to tip Box Hill, but you can't go against the side that was undefeated last year. So Essendon in a thriller.
And the last one, Western Bulldogs v the Casey Demons over at Mars Stadium over at Ballarat.
Yeah, heading out into the country for this one, and the preliminary finalists from last year who had a good pre-season, nearly beat Essendon, did beat the Southern Saints. They'll be winning. They'll be winning this one against the Western Bulldogs. They've shown a little bit of improvement, as we mentioned, Western Bulldogs, but I think they've got a long way still to come if they can challenge one of the likely premiership favourites in the Casey Demons. So the Demons to win this one pretty comfortably. But women's footy fans, this is your only opportunity in Ballarat to see the VFLW this year. Get out there at 12:30 on Sunday afternoon to Mars Stadium. Get behind your Bulldogs, and if you're a Demon supporter, of course, get behind your Demons. But hopefully they put on a good contest out there on Saturday.
We're all geared up for the season opener of the VFL Round 1 action, and we cross over to Icon Park. We've got Carlton v Geelong, 6:05 p.m. Rhodesy, what are your thoughts on how this game will go through?
What a way to start the season, hey? A team who was really flying at the end of last year, Carlton, charged into the finals in exciting fashion, won a final, nearly beat the Brisbane Lions in the second week, and they've had a really good pre-season as well, which we spoke about earlier in the show, when they came from well behind to beat Richmond last Thursday night in their last practice match. It showed that it does still mean plenty to them. Don't make any doubt about that. Geelong, they had a reasonable pre-season, didn't get the wins necessarily that they would have liked. Carlton at home, in good form on Friday night, 7:05. I'll be there. Not on air at this stage, unfortunately, but I'll be there having a good look at the contest, and I think Carlton will win. I think they look like a good team, and they're going to be up around the mark again this year. So I'm going for the Blues to win by probably around about 3 goals.
I'm with you there, mate. I think the way Carlton performed on Thursday night last week, winning form is good form, despite the fact that it's practice matches, but it's how you come from behind, trailing by a lot at half-time and coming back and winning in that style. I think a lot for them will depend on what the AFL team decides to do at selection, whether they'll go with the 2-punch ruckman in the ones. I think Mark Pitnet is so crucial to Carlton winning this game in the VFL. So if he gets the game, he'll... And it be the standalone ruckman, I think Carlton will just be too strong. He was a major difference maker on Thursday night last week, and big stage Friday night football. I think that's going to be massive. Collingwood and Coburg over at Victoria Park, as we mentioned, that is the warm up. I think to the women's game from memory. How do you see this one unfolding?
Yes, it is a double header at Victoria Park. On Saturday, so get out there, Magpie fans. Of course, Coburg in the VFL, Williamstown in the VFLW. So hopefully they get a good crowd there. Coburgers, well, they've haven't had the best of pre-seasons. They have had a huge turnover of experienced players. So what you're going to see from Coburg for your fans is a young team, a developing team. With no fear and a new game plan with a new coach under Jamie Cassidy McNamara. So it is exciting times for the Lions as they embark on a new era. But it's, even though Collingwood hasn't had a very good pre-season, they got themselves a win last week to get them to sort of kickstart things, and I think they'll be too strong for the Lions, and will get the points by around about that 5-goal mark. But they would want to be on, because Coburg will keep coming at them, and they do have a pretty useful record off the top of my head at Victoria Park, the Lions.
I'm going to back the Lions in this one here just to upset the apple cart, because I think the competition needs a team like Coburg to get this early win in the season to kickstart their campaign. If they can get off with some confidence, which I think at Victoria Park, as you said, there is a pretty good record there. It's going to be a big opportunity for them, and being a standalone team anyway, I think this is a great chance to put their front foot forward. We've got a hat-trick of games up in Brisbane, up in Queensland, which is challenging from the local calling fraternity, because I had the choice of picking which game to cover, personally being the only live caller at the venue itself. And I've chosen Southport and Sandringham, and that's the game we'll start off with first. It's a little bit of a later start. Southport and Sandy, that's going to be a massive contest, particularly given Southport's form in the off-season hasn't been as appetising as what you expect from the reigning grand finals, and Sandy haven't been too bad in the off-season.
Well, to be fair, Southport, they've had 2 games against the Brisbane Lions, who we're considering to be a major player. They finished second in the home and away season. They made the preliminary final, but the way that they put Southport away in those 2 games was very impressive. From the Lions' point of view, again, I'm not worried about Southport. They're going to be a very good team once again this year. I expect them to be around about that top 4 sort of level again. Sandringham, very competitive. Again, the injuries might be causing them some problem. It is going to bite them at some stage, and perhaps an interstate trip could be what happens there. So I'm backing Southport to win pretty comfortably, but they'd be wanting to play better football than they have done so far in the pre-season.
And I guess when we allude to the fact that the injury front, we're talking about the St Kilda Footy Club, who this week have had a couple of key injuries impact their list, so we're going to see a bit of depth reduced in the Sandringham team. And as we always say, it provides opportunities from players in nearby competitions. I would hope that we don't see a situation with Sandringham where they might have to travel interstate, where they might have to call on some of the local talent to jump in and play some roles there, as we saw with Essendon a few years ago, having to draw, getting Alex Rance to come in because he was available in the area and a couple of other younger talented players. So hopefully Sandringham can take a bit more of a list. I think the key for this game, though, is Southport, once they start strong, if they get away to a 4 or 5 goal lead in that first quarter, they're very, very hard to stop. So their success in the early part of the season will depend on their start, and they need a good one.
Yeah, no question about that. Sandringham only had 7 AFL listed players in that game against Werribee last week. You expect the number to be similar. They'll put up a good fight. Don't get me wrong; they always put up a good fight, Sandringham. But yeah, whether they can do it for 4 quarters against a quality opposition is going to be the key. They are in better shape than Essendon were when they were destroyed by COVID lockdowns in that particular game that you're talking about. Yeah. They will have as you mentioned, a good opportunity for the VFL listed players to prove themselves.
Absolutely. A couple of other games up here in southeast Queensland. The first VFL game over at Brighton Homes Arena on the official capacity. We've got the Brisbane Lions taking on the Werribee Tigers. Your thoughts?
I'm really interested in this one. This are going to be my pick to one of my picks to make the grand final this year. Werribee was my pick to win it last year, and they disappeared, as we mentioned in previous weeks. They fought back well to beat Sandringham last week, and they haven't gone too badly in their trips to Queensland over the past couple of years without actually getting over the line. You've got to back the Lions in this one, given the form they're in those 2 particular games against the Sharks. But Werribee, they really need to make a statement early on, and if they can go up there and claim this scalp, that could set up their whole season. I'm tipping the Lions to win, but certainly the Tigers, you would expect them to be ready and throw everything at them. Brisbane Lions to win for me.
Tommy Gribble will be on fire here for Werribee. One of a tremendous asset for the Tigers, and I expect him to have a standout performance and lead by example and compete against the Lions. Gold Coast Suns play host to Williamstown out on the back oval. That's certainly going to be an intriguing contest as well, given that the Suns are coming with a little bit of form, but we're going to be interested to see what happens at AFL selection during the week.
Yeah, very much so. It's a completely different blue and gold team that they're running into this week after the hoops of Sydney Uni to play the sash of Williamstown. No disrespect, of course, to the students, but Williamstown will put up a much more, I suppose, quality challenge for lack of a better term. Yeah. Gold Coast in good form, preliminary finalists last year. Positions in the AFL team, on one hand, potentially up for grabs because of the fact that they did not perform last Saturday. But on the other hand, the AFL team is going to Perth. Mm-hmm. So they're highly likely, you would think, to take 26 or 27 players over there, which means the VFL team is probably going to be a little bit below full strength. So that really opens the door for Williamstown. I'm going for the home team again. I'm not one to really throw it out there early in the season, but the Suns to win. But as you mentioned, it depends a lot on selection and how many emergencies the AFL team actually takes to Perth for their game against the Eagles, as to whether the Seagulls can get the job done up there at Ausworld Centre.
Casey Demons take on Footscray over at Casey Fields. Now, this is your game, I think, that you've got. How are you feeling about this one, mate? This is going to be a massive contest.
Oh, absolutely jumping out of my skin to finally be back on the air. It's been a long time since the qualifying final weekend last season. Really looking forward to getting some footy back in again. And this is the reigning premiers who lost only one game last year, unfurling the flag against a team who underachieved, to be fair, in 2022 after being undefeated in 2021. They did finish last season with a full head of steam, consecutive 100-point victories. got them up to a 10th place finish. They've had I was going to say they'd had an ordinary pre-season, but over the Casey Demons last week by 12 goals just really puts a stamp on this game as in my opinion now the match of the round. And I'm absolutely delighted to be lucky enough to be heading out to Casey Fields on Saturday afternoon at 2:00 to have a look at it. I think the Demons turn the tables. It is a point of mine to never pick against Casey Demons at Casey Fields, regardless of what's going on. So I won't be doing it in this game. What you don't know is how much Taylor Whitford held back from Footscray last weekend, knowing that they were playing for points 7 days later. But, of course, the Bulldogs might have done the same thing. They've had a great result, but how much do they still have up their sleeve? Do they play a completely different game plan? It's just questions everywhere, and they're all going to be answered on Saturday. But Demons to win for me at home.
And you get to call with the great Darren Park, and although I think he would be just quietly excited to have a chance to call with you, mate. So I've come across Parker a few times, particularly in the off-season, through various other commitments, and I know he's a quality caller. He's chomping at the bit, but it's certainly going to be a quality call, so make sure you jump on that board with that one there. The other game over at Arden Street, North Melbourne v Port Melbourne.
Oh, what a game this is too. It was probably, without that Casey Footscray result, it was probably going to be my call for match of the round. North Melbourne, as we've mentioned, with an undefeated pre-season. Port Melbourne, intriguing with their new look list, plenty of changes there and a stronger list. They've had a good pre-season. I expect them to climb the ladder. I expect both teams now to climb the ladder and really be pushing for a spot in the top 10 going into the finals. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I was Port Melbourne all the way until the last couple of weeks when North Melbourne just kept winning in practice matches. Now, the Borough went down to Williamstown at the start of the pre-season. We're closer to the start of the actual year, and North Melbourne has flogged the Seagulls. Do you read anything into that? I don't think we do. Yeah, I'm going to pull this one out for the first time this year. We're flipping a coin. We're straight up flipping a coin. I'm going to go for Port. I'm going to go for Port, but again, because we looked at Todd Goldstein, it's a key one. He will be back in the AFL team with Tristan Sherry going down with injury last week, so they've got to change their system just a little bit from the team that beat Williamstown. And I think that's where we lean just slightly towards Port Melbourne, but there's less than a kick in this one.
I'm going to lean more towards North. Their midfield will be quality, regardless of who goes up and who comes down. They've just got so much talent in that team, and I think it is better for the VFL and AFLW competitions itself that North have a little bit of success, and to come up against the red-hot Port Melbourne, who are just a wonderful football club and wonderful entity, it's certainly going to be a great challenge for them, and I'm going to go with them the other way, maybe 6 points. Turn our attention to...
Don't be surprised. Sorry, Andy. Don't be surprised if once I see the teams by the time I get to Friday afternoon and put my tips up on VFL.com.au that I'm on your side as well.
That's the beauty about we're at round one and we're already having headaches trying to determine who might get a W on the board earlier on. Sunday morning football over at Tramway Oval. We've got the Sydney Swans taking on Box Hill.
Up and down pre-seasons for both these two teams, haven't they? The Swans obviously would be disappointed by a 7-goal loss to GWS last Sunday morning, and we don't know much about the details, how many they rested, what they actually put forward. And the Box Hill Hawks, well, they had a really good win last week, an ordinary loss the week before. They're going to be up and down as well. We mentioned last week that they'd lost Benny Cavara for the season to a knee injury. And the question is where they're going to find goals from. They found 14 against Essendon in that practice match, and 14 is going to win you most games of VFL football. A trip interstate means it makes it a lot tougher. I'm going for Sydney to win the game. Maybe not quite as easily as I potentially thought before last weekend, but 10:05 a.m. at Tramway Oval should be a good game with the Swans to get the win, and a couple more injuries in the AFL team for Hawthorn too, which will create maybe a couple more changes there as well.
I think one of the benefits that Hawthorn will take up is that they do play Sydney and Hawthorn in the AFL are over in Sydney this weekend. Correct. So so if there's players that
their whole squad up there,
it's going to be advantageous to them too. Box Hill is that they're able to across the weekend with an extended list. They can guys that may not have had an opportunity. Depends what happens with the sub for Hawthorn. Does that player drop back down into the VFL and try and get some form, some run up? We'll certainly see what possibilities will happen there. I'm not going to see an incident of what happened to the NRL last weekend. I know it's a different related sport, but in my working capacity, we saw a Gold Coast Titans player that didn't get an opportunity to get on the ground, and as soon as the Titans beat the Storm in an upset, he jumped in an Uber and flew straight up to Ipswich. Went into the VFL equivalent of the competition, jumped straight on the ground and scored a try inside the opening minute. And so I don't know whether we'll have something like that where a player might not get an opportunity and he'll come on the ground and have an impact for the Hawks.
Yeah, well, with the senior game being played second, that probably won't happen. But yeah, that's a really interesting story. That one I hadn't heard that one down here in Melbourne, but yeah, great that they could do that, and it probably would have cost a couple hundred in an Uber to get out to Ipswich as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They got the W too. It was just exciting that he's a Gold Coast Titans player, and we need to get some game time, so why not score the opening try?
We're going on a run. Why not? No, great. Interesting that one there.
Richmond v Northern Bullants over at Punt Road.
Tigers for me, but 4 weeks ago, before the pre-season started, I held really big concerns for the Northern Bullants about whether they could be competitive this year, given all the quality that they've lost. But again, with the new coach in there in Brodie Holland, who played some terrific AFL football for Collingwood and Fremantle. He's done his apprenticeship away from the top system at Caroline Springs in particular last year. He's brought a system in. He brought a couple of Caro guys with him, and they've had a terrific pre-season. To be fair, they've beaten Coburg, they've beaten Frankston, pushed Williamstown. And they will go in with some confidence. It's a TV game, as we mentioned, on Channel 7. So, they've got an opportunity to really sell their brand here, the Northern Bullants. And the last time they played Richmond in a feature sort of game was in 2021 at Preston City Oval, and they beat them. They were one of the teams that they beat Richmond in that year. And so they will think that they're a chance. And if they can come out and play good football, get a good start to the game and see how they go. We saw Richmond fade against Carlton last Thursday night. So they'll be looking to remedy that. You'd expect Richmond to win. If they're going to be a finals team, they've got to be winning these games. But yeah, they wouldn't want to be having a sleep during the game. That's for sure, because the Bullants won't sleep.
No, absolutely not. They're going to be one of the big improvers, no doubt about it. I think they're going to take some time under Dutchy's leadership, but what Dutchy has done since he's walked out of, or since he retired from AFL football, even coaching in regional Victoria and of course Metro, as you alluded to, I think they're going to build a good solid list, and they will definitely compete. And you hit the nail on the head earlier on. That the game on Thursday night is that they were playing for everything in the practice match, and Richmond, they'll be wanting to do everything they can to prevent that replication from happening, where they lose a good lead at halftime and roll over.
Yeah, exactly right in that one. you'd think if they get themselves a 6-goal lead, the Northern Bull Ants don't run them down as Carlton did.
Yeah.
But if the Bull Ants can sort of stay close and keep the pressure on, then anything's possible at this level of footy.
Final game of round 1 in the VFL. We got the Bombers taking on the Giants. That's over at the Hangar.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. I did make a mistake earlier. I said the Gold Coast Suns were travelling to Perth in the AFL. They're actually coming down to Melbourne to play Essendon in the AFL game, and it's the Giants who are going to Perth. So it's a similar situation in that from the previous game, but the Suns might only bring two players down potentially to Melbourne rather than 3 or 4, and the Giants will probably take 4 to Perth, which affects their chances of coming to the Hangar and beating Essendon in the VFL. Love to see where Aaron Cadman is, because the way he started the pre-season, as we said, with 10 goals in his 2 pre-season games, he is really making his mark after being the number 1 draft pick. He's not going to be far away from an AFL game, surely. I don't think Adam Kingsley will rush him in before he's ready, that's for sure. If he's in Melbourne, then the Giants are a big chance to win this game. If he's in Perth, then I think Essendon wins. I'm still going to lean towards Essendon at home. Picking in round 1, it's safer to pick mostly the home teams and just see what happens. I could be completely shown up, of course, but yeah, Bombers in a close one. Yeah, in round 1, Bombers in a close one, but yeah, if Aaron Cadman's there kicking snags out at the Hangar, then it's the Giants who will take a lot of beating. It'll take everything Essendon's got to get over them.
We're already seeing the Cadman factor come in, which is great for Giants fans as they look to build a quality list under Adam Kingsley in the AFL competition. But that is your VFL Round 1 preview. And, of course, just a reminder, Rhodesy, what game will you have the pleasure of being the Golden Tonsils in again?
It's at Casey Fields on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. 2:05 bounce. Can't wait for that one. The Casey Demons versus Footscray. The Demons unfurling the flag. We'll try and get on just a little bit earlier to show Demons fans who can't get out there that, but if you can get there, Casey fans, it's the first time you'll be doing this since in 30 years, in nearly 30 years. 1995, I think, was the last premiership, or 99, somewhere around that. 1999, I think, might have been the last premiership for the Casey Demons, or Springvale as they were back then. So get out there and watch the flag be unfurled, and then see a terrific game of football. If you can't be there, you've got one of the A teams you've got the Victorian A team to bring it to you, as opposed to the Queensland A team.
Yeah, well, you've got choices, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to listen to Rhodes and Parker go toe to toe, or you at the same time,
at the same time.
Exactly, you can listen to me just go solo between the Sharkies and the Zebras. I think you might have some better weather.
If you can't pump your own tyres up, who's going to do it for you?
Well, do you want to listen to about an hour and a half of Rhodesy, or do you want to listen to 2.5 hours of Yeendy? That's completely up to your choice. That's what makes this VFL 23 spectacular. We are the voices behind the call that analyse the call, that bring you the call to the people. Rhodesy, thanks so much for your company here as we fire up for round 1 of the VFL and the VFLW competition. I know you're getting excited, mate.
Can't wait. Absolutely jumping out of my skin. The footy's back. Bring it on. Come on, VFL. And get behind your local team. Get out to the footy. And as we just said, if you can't, well, you've got the best seat in the house on afl.com.au.
Absolutely. You've been listening to the 6th edition of VFL 23. We'll catch you next week.